first year, so you're going to listen to a new voice here. So let me start by welcoming all of you to the 73rd anniversary, commemoration of the 73rd anniversary of the Battle of Manila, February 3rd to March 3rd, 1945. Squadron 201, Squadron 201, flew in action for 7 months, helping defeat the Japanese imperial forces in this country. And they lost several airmen, and we must always be grateful for that country's participation in our liberation. Spain, on the other hand, lost many of his citizens who lived in Manila. Well, we were a colony of Spain for 300 years, so you can imagine that there were many Spaniards that lived here. Most specifically, they lost them in Intramuros and the Ermita areas, among them my maternal grandmother, in the same conflagration that took thousands of Filipino civilians. United States land, naval, and air forces liberated the Philippines and Manila from the Imperial Japanese forces. Obviously, they lost a lot of men, a lot of soldiers in the conflict, and we must never forget their sacrifice either. I also want to acknowledge today other groups who are with us. Friends of Intramuros, the City of Manila, Filipino World War II, and other groups, including Teresita Ansi and the Chinese contingent Wanchi guerrillas, members of the Bridge for Peace. And also, I want to welcome the 30 new members that we have been able to have joined Memorare this past year. We were getting a little old and we wanted to bring in some youth, and I think we have accomplished a little bit of it. Hopefully we get more later on. So, with that, let me just start by saying, Memorare Manila Foundation, 1945, was formed in 1995, 50 years after the battle by survivors of that terrible month. 73 years after the battle, many people, especially the young, may ask, why is it important to commemorate this event? And how does this event affect me? Obviously, as you get further from the event, people know less and less what happened. Good questions. To answer, I've come up with several reasons. First, we must mourn, grieve, validate, and remember the deaths of over 100,000 people, civilians, who perished in that month. Innocent people, children, women, men, elderly, sick. The children who were killed never had the chance to grow up, to fulfill their dreams, careers, to have families of their own. The men and women who saw their children and other members of their families die by bayonet, bullet, sword, grenade, by burning and by shelling, and in many cases, they were killed themselves. The elderly and the sick who should have passed the last years of their lives in peace and tranquility. We must remember them. Secondly, and perhaps even to a greater extent, we must remember the survivors. These people suffered not only physical wounds in many cases, but also psychological ones as well. They've had to live the rest of their lives carrying that burden and those terrible memories in their soul. We have several survivors here today who have written accounts of their ordeal in that battle. One can physically feel their pain and sorrow in those words. So we must remember them and honor them. Third, the city of Manila was destroyed almost completely, especially the southern part. It was a beautiful city, used to be called the Pearl of the Orient, who lost not only its citizenry, but many of its cultural treasures, which can never be recovered again. We must remember that city. War, as someone once said, is hell. Manila and its citizens went through that hell. And I am sure that there are over 100,000 reasons to commemorate this event. These are only a few. Winston Churchill, the great British Prime Minister of World War II, once said, "The people who forget their past have no future." Sometimes we Filipinos have a tendency to forget our past easily. We must not let that happen. We must never allow something like this to ever happen again. That is why we must remember. The Japanese government has never formally acknowledged or apologized for the actions of its military in Manila and in its 3-year occupation of this country. That is unfortunate. The actions of its armed forces in dealing with the civilian population were brutal and barbaric. They punished the population who could not defend itself. Their actions are inexplicable, and though many reasons have been given for their conduct, none, in my opinion, fully explains it. What is known is what one of our members, who unfortunately could not join us today, the eminent historian and author, Dr. Benito Legarda, has said in some of his many articles and books on the battle. Their actions were deliberate and methodical. He is a survivor, and his words carry much weight. In other words, their actions were not an accident. It was done with forethought and with impunity. Memorare members would like to see a formal apology from Japan. Hopefully it will come soon. For without repentance, there can be no real reconciliation. And that circle must be closed. I have great hopes that one day it will. However, there are signs that the Japanese population of today, most of whom did not participate in the war, obviously they're all young, are beginning to realize what happened here. Young Japanese are becoming interested in knowing the truth. And this is a first step. A group which I mentioned in the beginning, I probably forgot to mention them, I'm sorry, called the Bridge for Peace, is one of the drivers of this movement. Founded by a young Japanese woman, Naoko Jin, who's with us today here in the audience, with her young son. Years ago came to the Philippines as a student and discovered there was some resentment from older Filipinos who had gone through World War II against the Japanese. I won't go into the details of that story here today. Suffice it to say, she founded and organized the Bridge for Peace, whose name is quite apt. This group brings young Japanese students and teachers and professors and other interested people to this event year after year. And I admire them because they stand here every year and listen to the stories of what happened in Manila in February of '45 and the actions of their countrymen towards the civilian population of the city. And it cannot be easy to do that. It must be very difficult for them to do that. And I admire them for that. It shows a real attempt at repentance, and their presence here honors our dead, our wounded, and our survivors. These are among the leaders in extending the hand of reconciliation between Filipinos and Japanese. And I will ask them now to stand up and be acknowledged by all of us. I want to know in Japanese. Memorare has several goals it wants to achieve. I have mentioned the apology and of course the yearly commemoration that we do here every year. Among our goals are to cooperate and coordinate with the Department of Education to expand and explain the events of February 1945 and World War II in general in the Philippines in the school curriculum. Our youth need to know much more of what happened here in those years than what is now in that curriculum. We hope we can work with the Department of Education to achieve that goal. Another of our goals is to cooperate and coordinate with all Filipino World War II groups. Bataan and Death March veterans, Philippine Scouts, veterans of the battles in the rest of the Philippines, including Besang Paz and others, guerrilla groups including the Wanchi guerrillas, internees of Santo Tomas and Bilibid, as well as prisoner of war camps in Cabanatuan, Laguna, Palau, and other places, and of course the Comfort Women. Each of these groups had their own goals and objectives, but the Battle of Manila did not happen in a vacuum. It was part of history, of the history of World War II in the Philippines, and all of us should cooperate and help each other. Before I end, I want to mention that a member of the US-based Bataan Historical Society, Ricardo Villarino, has brought a bronze replica of the Congressional Gold Medal recently issued by the US Congress in recognition of the Filipino veterans who fought shoulder to shoulder with their American allies in the Philippine Campaign of Liberation. Our soldiers fought bravely and paid a high price, many dying in those campaigns. Ricardo's father was a veteran of Bataan and of the Death March. So by coincidence was my uncle Julian, survivor of the Death March. This recognition is way overdue, but I am happy that it has been finally given and our veterans have been honored by it. I will ask Ricardo to come up later on the program and show us the replica to us all, and if we have a veteran here, maybe we can give it to him. I'm not sure we have one, but if we do, we'll try to find somebody to give it to. So, with that, I end this little talk. Thank you all for coming. Good morning, and I hope the program goes well.
The next to offer the wreath the City of Manila.
Prayer for the victims and perpetrators of injustice and inhumanity. For all those who have fallen victim to hatred and inhumanity. To those loved ones who have left behind to mourn. For souls of those who have hearts that are cold. Lord, hear our prayer. For the children who were born into the world of conflict and violence. For all the children who have died before their time. For men and women who suffered needlessly in the hands of our oppressors. Lord, hear our prayer. For those who fell victims to the atrocities of war and for men, women, and children who have tried in their beds at night, reliving the horrors of what they experienced and seen done to their family and friends. For those who found the courage to fall or to tell the world the truth about our experiences in the Battle of Manila, Lord, hear our prayer. For the soldiers who allowed their uniform to strip to them on their inhumanity, for the redemption of the souls of both victims and perpetrators, for those who commit themselves to forgiveness of the horrors done to them. Lord, hear our prayer. Amen.
The total death toll is about 100,000, give or take a few. There were probably many who were never accounted for. When you look at the deaths that occurred there were many who were simply disappeared. They were never found again. Among us here are relatives, friends, who never saw their relatives or friends. The bones were never found. In fact, very close by here would be a number of mass graves that were never really identified. Just a few blocks away here, there was an emergency grave marked by a white cross. And that was part of the 100,000 who died here. The story has yet to be told. I just finished going over a 600-page manuscript of a book that's coming out later this year, focusing on the plight of the civilians. And as I read through it, the descriptions were extremely painful, they were extremely brutal. It was much more than I actually remembered and what I actually had read. And it was very hard to read. As I went through page after page after page, the pictures were so vivid, they gave me nightmares. I could not forget some of the pictures that I saw. The book is long, 600 pages. In fact, the editor has asked that it be shortened a bit because who's going to read the 600-page book? And even with those 600 pages, I noticed several stories that were not there. Stories that I was personally familiar with, and just as brutal, they were not in that book. So if everyone's story was to be told, we would easily have a book more than 1,000 pages. Again, who's going to read that now? So what is important is remembering what happened, documenting it somewhere, and we do have facilities for that. We have a lot of material that has now been digitized and is accessible online. So that has to be done today. We're familiar with, for example, the Holocaust, the Holocaust of the Jews in Europe. They have a massive program of documenting all the survivors. we don't have a similar program yet. Hopefully, with those who still survive, we'll be able to reach out and get their stories down. Now, not everybody's stories will ever be written. Many have been lost forever. But with what we have, it's something that should remain in our memory. Not a very painful memory, but something that we should learn from. One thing I think we're all here is we don't want to point fingers, we don't want to stir images of hate. We are more working towards understanding. Why did it happen? And how can we prevent such a thing from happening again? And that's one reason why we're here every year. We commemorate those who fell at the time. We commemorate those who were victorious. We see a triumph of spirit in a sense, but it has to be remembered nonetheless. And so it's not hate that we're fomenting here, but we would like understanding. We would like to never ever have to undergo this kind of tragedy again. Thank you very much for coming.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Naoko, founder and president of an organization called Bridge for Peace, which is based in Japan. We are here, 6 members of Bridge for Peace, and we feel very honored to be here, and at the same time, so sad that Ambassador Rocha is not here today. First, I would like to thank the organizers for accepting us, Japanese, who are the descendants of the Japanese soldiers who invaded your country, as being not directly responsible for all those crimes. We, as a descendants, would like to apologize for what our forefathers had done during the wartime. It was in the year 2000, I first came to the Philippines as a university student. During that time, I must say, I was really ignorant. I really don't know about what had happened here in the Philippines. But one lady came up to me and said, "Why did you come to the Philippines? I didn't want to see any Japanese. Why are you here?" I was so shocked to know the anger and hatred toward the Japanese people. And I started thinking myself, what can I do as a member of post-war generation? This is how I started the organization, Bridge for Peace. Actually, our activity is to record testimonies from the war survivors and then show the films to the younger generation so that the youth could learn, Japanese youth could learn what our forefathers had done in the Philippines and the other Asian countries. These are the activities of the Bridge for Peace. So, we would like to plan to continue spreading out advocacy with strong determination to never ever forget. And we believe accepting the past of our culture, our country, and listening to the words of the people who experienced them, and to ensure that these mistakes never again is what we, the post-war generation, can do. We will continue our activity with the firm belief that this will open the road to peace and reconciliation. Maraming salamat po.
It was a very heartwarming speech given by the Bridge for Peace. I cannot imagine what she felt when she first came here and said and confronted by a person such words. However, as previous speaker said, we are not here to foment hate, but we must not forget what happened in the past. Mayor Joseph Ejercito Estrada personally instructed me to join all of you here. And though he is not with us today, he would like to assure you of his full support in all of your endeavors. The City Government of Manila and Memorare 1945 Foundation would always join hands in putting into good use the valuable memories of the past to move forward, not only for a better Manila, but for a nation of people who put love of country as one of its priorities. As again, we are not here to foment hate, but we have to move forward, and in doing so, we must not forget the past.
So I represent the Department of Education. So I had a chance to teach elementary, high school, and college. And as you all know, history in the Philippines, I do not know if it's true in your country, is also considered boring by the students. It's actually up to the teacher to make this subject or course interesting. Magandang balikan ang ating yugto sa ating kasaysayan mula sa pananaw ng mga Pilipino. So it says that we have to look back in our history from our point of view, because in most cases in the past, our books in history were written by the foreigners. So we would like to emphasize that if it's written by the Filipinos, our point of view will be considered. So because we always say, I would like to underscore that history serves as our key to our future. It is here where we learn something from the past. We cannot commit mistakes. It's because we say that we have to learn from the past. There was a survey among Filipino children. There were about 207 Filipino children, grade 5 students, and they were asked the question, given a chance to choose the nationality, what nationality would you choose? And it's so frustrating to note that among the 207 students, only 10 students chose to be Filipinos. So what do we mean by this? This situation in the Philippines remains to be a challenge not only for college professors but also challenge for teachers in the basic education. We in the Department of Education, we are trying our very best to instill in the minds of the young Filipinos the love for country. But there is still a need for us to strengthen more our effort so that we'll be able to instill, so that we'll be able to make them be proud that they are Filipinos. It's important that nationalism should be taught first in the family. So as the mayor of Manila stated, we have to move forward and not forget the past. There are so many things that we've learned from the past, and we have to learn from it.
I am Ricardo Villarina Jr., a retired Air Force Major, and the son of the Philippine Scout of the F Company, 45th Regiment of the Philippine Scout. He was a Bataan Death March survivor and also a prisoner of war for 2 years. He passed away when he was almost 100 years old in San Francisco. And I am here today to carry on his legacy. As you know, as the previous speaker has said, I was one of the lucky ones who attended the presentation, the award of the Congressional Gold Medal at the U.S. Capitol in the Emancipation Hall in Washington, D.C. last 25 October 2017. So it took us 75 years, and finally it had been recognized. There were something like about 20 veterans who were there, who represented the medal, along with the next of kin, and I was one of the next of kin. I'm here today to show you the replica. It is not a gold medal, it is a bronze medal to represent the Congressional Medal. And later on, as Mr. Gaborus has suggested, if we have a veterans here of World War II who are present today, we'll be glad to present this to him. Along with the bronze medal, here it is. All the stories here, 5 pages long. It was signed by President Obama last December 2017.